thank you so much. I'll know how I feel now, what it feels like to be successful. Thank you. Thank you for, first of all, to Professor Bondaruk for arranging this thing for the Institute to host the whole evening in this wonderful building. To my friends who came to read with me, especially to Eckhart as the publisher who has faith in my book and in me. Thank you very much. And to all of you who have come, and I hope you have enjoyed the evening and will enjoy what I'll read for you tonight. I was going to read the first and the last prose piece from this book, but it's getting to be late in the evening, and I decided I'll just read the last one. It's not too long, and you can very easily find out what happens before it by buying the book. So. And I think both me and Eckhart are going to appreciate that. So thank you in advance. This is one of my favorite stories, actually. I always knew I was going to write it, and one day I actually did. It's called The Yellow Streetcar with No Name. One day, Rodrigo Vanas learned he was going to take the yellow streetcar. He had been waiting for this so long that tears came to his eyes and his mouth shook as he related the happy news to his family. His wife threw her arms around him and hugged him so hard he hurt, and the kids clung to his legs like crabs and pulled them this way and that, so that he nearly fell over and was saved only by the edge of the table in the cramped dining room space. The busy wallpaper with the blue flowers seemed sadly out of place for such a happy occasion, as did the melancholy dusk settling over Lisbon that was finding its way into the room through the single narrow window. He had less than 2 days to get ready, so there was no time to waste on sentimentalities. A lot of preparations had to be made for such an important event. Kids were ordered into their room and given tasks that were to keep them busy, and Rodrigo Vanas and his wife locked themselves up in their bedroom to do the necessary planning. His black suit would have to be thoroughly brushed and pressed, but was almost certainly tight enough for the occasion. He had plenty of white shirts, and one of them surely would look right. The black tie would have to be bought, but that was a simple thing to do. Old patent leather shoes, which would fit his big bony feet, might be a problem to find in the flea market, but perhaps one of the undertaker firms would have a spare pair which they would be willing to part with for a reasonable price. His neighbor from across the street, Vargas, had a bowler hat and had expressed his willingness to make a gift of it to him if his time to take the yellow streetcar came first, so that issue was solved. There was a thin black cane somewhere in the house, most probably in the attic, and it would only have to be painted with black lacquer, so that again was no problem. He would take the few necessities he actually didn't need but was obliged to take, in the old doctor's leather satchel that came from a great uncle on either his or his wife's side, they couldn't remember, that had been kept for all these years for just this occasion. Those were the material things. The business and legal matters would have to be reviewed in the morning with the notary, but it was almost certain they would present no problem. If worse came to worse, his wife would take care of them after his departure. The next day was devoted to issues connected with the trip. The following one to farewells. Rodrigo Vanas stopped by the butchers, the bakers, the various stalls at the market. He said goodbye to his tailor and his shoemaker, visited his parents' graves in a cemetery high up on the hill, and so on. His old schoolhouse was all locked up by the time he came across to it late in the afternoon, but his classmates were there still around, who were still around, stood at the windows looking sadly out at him and silently waving their hands. Tears seemed to have welled up in the windows themselves, as if about to start running down the panes. The festive dinner, only for the family, was held the night before. Then came 5 o'clock, time of departure, the yellow hour. The doctor's satchel in his left hand, the shiny black cane hanging off his other arm, and with his wife on it, the kids around them, Rodrigo Vanos and his family, all dressed in black, walked solemnly down the sidewalk to the corner where he thought the yellow streetcar was going to pick him up. The instructions weren't quite clear on that point, but there was no way of finding out for sure. Yet there was little doubt this was the spot, since every other person in the neighborhood they knew who had taken the yellow streetcar had departed from there. They came and waited. The traffic in the street moved blithely in both directions, as if it were a day like all the other. People in the street went nonchalantly about their business, and the faded blue sky stretched calmly above their heads, unaware of the importance of the moment. Far away on the other side of the river, for the first time, birds could be heard singing their silly, empty songs. Then suddenly the yellow streetcar was in front of them. It had appeared noiselessly and without any warning, like a picture on the page of a magazine when the leaf is turned. It stood huge and shiny in front of Rodrigo Vanos, its door open, ready for him to enter it. His eyes now finally also full of tears, Rodrigo Vanos hugged his wife and unexpectedly kissed her firmly on the mouth, as he hadn't done for years, bent down to kiss his kids, told everyone not to be sad, turned around, and resolutely placed his foot on the step. He raised himself up on it, brought the other foot forward, placed it on the next step, raised himself up again, and was inside the car. With a tinny clang, music to Rodrigo Vanos's ears, it shook and rolled forward. They were off. Rodrigo Vanos turned around and saw his family huddled together at the curb, as if frightened, waving at him photographs depicting his face, reproduced with different degrees of intensity, from barely visible to nearly black, with his mouth, its lips white, open like that of a fish. Amazingly, the traffic in the street had now stopped, and all the people stood still and looked at the car. Some waved their hands, some of which in turn held white handkerchiefs. The car moved solemnly down the street, in which now there was no traffic, like a stately procession. The great river on the left, the Tejo, or Tagus, was still as if paved with concrete. Roses stopped blooming in gardens behind iron fences, like people holding their breath in excitement. Chinamen in Chinese laundries interrupted their work and stood at the door to see the yellow streetcar go by. Fadistas in the fado places stopped singing and stood among the customers crowding on the sidewalks, some of them with drinks in their hands, curious expressions on their faces. As those about to die a violent death supposedly see flashing through their minds moments before their end, Rodrigo Vanos saw the important scenes from his life displaced for his benefit in various tableaus in vacant lots between buildings and vegetable or flower gardens. He, as an infant in a long white shirt trimmed with lace, half buried in his mother's bosom, sucking avidly on her full breast, aged 6 months, sitting on the sofa in the living room, smiling a toothless smile and shaking a pink and white rattle, walking for the first time to school with a proud, solemn face and a brand new school bag on his back, a teenager stealing his first kiss from a shy girl girl taller than he, although of the same age, in the dusk under the chestnut tree in the empty schoolyard. His first day on the job in the accountant's office he worked at until 2 days ago, perched on a tall stool, hunched over a huge book, crawling with numbers as if with ants, clumsily making love for the first time on the sofa at the home of the girl he almost married on a Sunday afternoon with everyone else while everyone else was away. He and his wife, like two separate life-size photographs, pasted on cardboard, standing awkwardly at the top of the stairs in front of the door of the church after the wedding ceremony. He clumsily cradling his firstborn son, brick red and screaming minutes after his birth, his wife in the nearby bed looking proudly up at him. A few more scenes like that, ending with the family huddled together by the dining room table, with him announcing the news of the yellow streetcar 2 days ago. The car moved past the great suspension bridge like a giant effortlessly stepping over the river in one stride, the Monasterio dos Jerónimos, the monastery of the Jeronymites, like a fancy garment of stone lace, the spectral white Torre do Belém, the Tower of Bethlehem, the old prison, the cells of which flooded with the rising tide so that the inmates in them didn't last more than 6 months. The car was empty at times, with only a solitary fly or two crawling on the dusty window panes, and perhaps a skinny dog curled up under a bench, at other times full of people packed like sardines on the wooden benches and standing around them. The scenes alternated as if in an irregularly flashing slow-down strobe light. As long as he could distinguish them, Rodrigo Vanas looked out the rear window, watching his family saying goodbye to him. But when they merged into a dot, he turned the other way and faced the Atlantic. The car climbed the last steep hill, moving unsteadily from side to side like a drunk, uncertain to make it to the top, reached the crest, huge as the setting sun, trembled for a second or two, and plunged obligingly into the emptiness before it. Thank you.